Yes, again, welcome to Hen House Studios Live. And today we have the world-famous, world-class poet Michael C. Ford in the studio. And Michael has had a long history in Los Angeles culture, and I'm sure you'll agree and that he is an incredible poet, one to be taken seriously. Michael, welcome.
World class. That's class. Wow. And you know, my last name is Ford, and there's sometimes a lot of questions about that, and I want to just clear something up. The foundation is doing just fine without me, and I'm not. You know,
that's the Ford Foundation.
Very briefly, the year was 1912. I got a call from a guy named Henry in Detroit, and he said, "Look, I want to put your name on my vehicles." See, he thought my name sounded more automotive than his Teutonic name.
Right.
So I said, go for it, and that's why 92 years later, well, you can imagine the understandable pride. Standing on a street corner, seeing my name emblazoned on the back of a pickup truck loaded with tar paper. Seriously.
That's a pretty incredible image,
oh,
yeah.
It's the difference between grandeur and disgrace. Which is,
you sometimes wear the Ford hat. I've seen you wear the Ford hat a lot. Oh. You're not wearing it today. You're wearing it in L.A.
No, I left it in Dallas. Ah. I did a lot of time in Texas and going into schools and doing classroom demonstrations and creative writing, speech arts classes, and some concerts with some musicians. And some of it was in a place called Booker T. Washington's School of Performing Arts, which is almost on the surface of things like a fame school.
When was this?
This was like just couple of months ago, yeah, when I've been there.
That's why you haven't been around L.A., you've been in Texas.
Like, yeah, I still feel like I'm in re-entry. Ah. You know, I feel when I came back into Southern California, I needed a passport, you know. But
speaking of Southern California, let's talk about how when you first came here, you were a young boy, you were 3, and then I think you left, and then you came back again, and then at some point you were really involved in the music scene in Los Angeles around a certain club. You want to explain what happened, what that was all about, how that was the birth of a whole movement of musicians and poets? There was a
very full tilt energy going on in the early 60s, and I actually met John Densmore, the drummer for the Doors, before I met Ray and Jim at film school at UCLA.
Oh, were you a student at UCLA then too?
I was schlepping scenery for John Houseman's theater group before he moved downtown. He used UCLA performance spaces. He used Royce Hall. He used Schoenberg Hall. He used the lecture hall in the Humanities building. He used the lecture hall in the Lawyers building. He used any available space.
So you met Jim, John, and Ray.
John lived just to the east of my maternal grandparents on Wilkins Avenue in Westwood. Ah. And I saw him loading his drum kit into a car, and I said, "Where are you going, man?" He said, "The Balladeer." And so I discovered the Balladeer was an incubator for a lot of people that later on began to flourish.
So this was a club?
This was like a coffee house. And it had no piano, so there were a lot of room for guitar pickers to come in. And there was a jazz quartet playing in there, but the keyboard player brought in vibraharp, no piano. So there was a really fine group of people in there. That guy that headed up the quartet, Gary Marker, went on to co-found the Rising Suns with Taj Mahal.
Oh, wow.
And that's when I met Jim McGuinn, David Crosby, and Gene Clark, and
there were some of the members of the Byrds were hanging out too.
The dishwasher was John Kay, who went up to San Francisco and founded a group called Sparrow, and then came down to Los Angeles and renamed it Steppenwolf.
Yeah, I remember that band.
The busboy was Brian McLean, who went on to co-found with Arthur Lee a band called Love.
Wow.
So you can see the incubation that's going on here.
This is all right here in Los Angeles. What part of Los Angeles?
John Densmore was playing drums with Mike Lang, who played piano and was the keyboard player with Paul Horn and also later on with Tom Scott. Wow. And then Mike Lang moved into studio work. That's what he wanted to be. He wanted to be a studio musician. So I've got music coming in both ears. This must have been in the
mid-60s, is this happening?
Yeah, 64.
Wow.
60, and 65, UCLA, I got to, I met Ray and Jim, and I audited a lecture class. Joseph von Sternberg was lecturing in the film department.
So I don't know if any of you know, but what happened with Michael, he was actually the original bass player in The Doors, and many of you
Well, not really.
Well, okay, go ahead. Tell the story.
The story is that they thought they needed a bass player like every band. And I said, Ray, all you got to do is play that little Vox keyboard. You play the bass. You don't need a bass player.
So it was your idea.
So I talked, well, he had the bass. I said, you don't need a bass player. So I talked myself out of
the Doors gig.
But then
so you were playing bass back then.
I was playing upright bass with a Freedom Jazz Quintet.
But you really wanted to be a poet.
And Ray and I had a band for about 10 minutes called the White Trash Quintet. And we played in a coffee house. It was called Mother Neptune's.
Wow. Where was that?
That was practically in the backyard of Los Angeles City College on Melrose.
Oh, wow.
And the jazz musicians that would come in there were amazing players. The band, actually at that time, Ray on keyboard, and like you say, I was playing upright, and Jim would come in and bang tambourine and bounce around the coffee house, and when he'd get up on stage, he'd turn his back to the audience, which is like what Miles Davis did later on. So,
but anyway, if I can interject, so basically what ended up happening is you decided that you wanted to pursue your poetry career.
Well, it was sort of, yeah, I mean, I saw the formulation of all these bands, sort of, and I went to Idaho, and I was hanging out in Boise, and at that time there were poets up there who were giving me some work, and they are no longer. All the people that were giving me work are either dead or deported. You know, it just seems that's the way it worked out. But every once in a while, I'd come back from Idaho. I'd come back to Southern California, and I'd see each step of the evolution of the Doors music. And
one time you came back and they were playing at the Hollywood Bowl, right?
I called Jim at the office. He said, "Come on down." I said, "What room are you playing?" And he said, "The Hollywood Bowl."
That's a great story. But anyway, I just want the viewers to know that not only is Michael a very accomplished poet, but he is, to this day, a very accomplished musician. And with that, I would really love to hear one of your poems. Why don't you set this poem up and give it a read for us?
Oh, okay. Well, let me set it up this way. This is a 1943 novel called Laura. Laura was actually the black and white film. It was a black and white film that signaled the beginning of that entire catalog of black and white crime dramas, 1940s, 1950s crime dramas, collectively now referred to as film noir.
Wow.
Laura was the one that started it really.
All.
And so when I had...
Can I hold that up for our viewers?
Yeah, sure.
Take a look at the book he's talking about.
I didn't have Vera Caspary, who was the author, sign it. I had David Raxon sign it. And he's the guy, of course, who composed the soundtrack music for Laura. And Laura became the most recorded by instrumentalists and vocalists, the most recorded melody from a soundtrack movie.
Wow. Sing us the melody. Do you know it? Can you remember it?
Yeah, it's just, when you see Laura, she's a face on a midnight train, and it's all these wonderful Johnny Mercer lyrics. But David Raxon not only composed the music for Laura, he composed the music for Force of Evil, Bad and the Beautiful,
Ah.
a movie called Sylvia, which was not a very good film, but to the, you know, what, it was a film that had two components, Carol Baker and David Raxon's music.
We're going to have to get to the poem here, because we can talk about him, but, you know, I'd rather talk about you.
Well, I'm getting to that. He composed the music for John Cassavetes' film Too Late Blues. And I met John when he was shooting his second film, Faces, the one he did after Shadows. And we knew each other for a time, and we had mutual respect for each other's work.
All right, well, let's get to this poem, because I wish we had all day, but we don't. So why don't you set this poem up and give it a read? Well,
this is my take on Cassavetes' films, My Secret Life in Cottonwood, Idaho. And that's a film that I said, you ought to do a movie called Cottonwood, Idaho. And John said, yeah. He was so spontaneous, man. He said, we'll get Lee Marvin, you know. And anyway, this is the follow-up to that thinking. And every time somebody will ask me how many times you see his movies, I answer, not enough. A microwave oven sun's beginning to cook Seven Devils Mountain for breakfast. Below, snow dribbles off the cold plaque on the rock. Somebody's old Chrysler Woody there, soaking in winter's drippy goodbye. Shade shaped like an antique car covers Horseshoe Bend. We were both born to shamble into ruin. A different geography might not mean a thing. Another Nez Perce flash raid, maybe. Nothing else. It's because of 1877 bloody recompense, where bluecoats were too many massacred, because the chief was already in the slammer, because Whitebird said blood is the only solvent for this disgrace. Heavy dews down by Slate Creek, no land in Lopwai Canyon, not with General Howard as the government's hired gun. Deaths were collected here too, yes. They'd clog the bloodlines in Wallowa Valley. Once, beyond the switchback road, brave Cassavetes, you were the color of the Camas Prairie, and Jenna, as protective as a roof over the northwest wind, now turning into an Indian pony, a paint with an empathetic mane, rides away, really insensitive for me to smoke a cigarette, wasting time, waiting here inside this rocky shade. For how many minutes more? Janos, I need your advice again, as long as it may take when my ride gets here. Where can I go?
That's great.
And of course,
that's a beautiful poem.
Cassavetes would invite me to a lot of his screenings sometimes, and go to dailies, you know, the footage he would shoot during the day, and it's a lot of incredible stuff.
That's great. Now, we're going to play a clip that we prepared at Hen House Studios, and it's a poem about the history of drumming in America, with John Densmore playing drums along with Michael C. Ford, John Densmore being the drummer from The Doors. You guys ready in there to roll it in?
Yeah, we got you covered.
Okay, take it away.
Georgia's swamp, slave escape, frontier time signatures, 19th century rural South syncopation, black protest to all chains. Ham bone spoons, back up, buck and wing, chant in Cottonfield's secret code. Blues lyric parodies decorated by banjo percussions, preceded 12-bar strains. 1928 Jelly Roll, Morton turns ragtime salty protest into hot pepper. Soon New Orleans marching band through King Oliver. He let Lewis loose, Satchmo. That horn varies field hollers to big funeral drum evolution. On vinyl, in Chicago, mostly blues on Wells. Halsted Street, Ben Armstrong and Bechet in New York. But you want to talk about this phase when drummers began sitting down to play, when drum sets were called traps. That was an assembling of bass drum, maybe with painted decals seen on the facing skin, usually lit up inside with a 10-watt bulb. Plus, there was a wooden-sided snare drum, offspring of the old parade drum and Indian tom-tom replica, with skins tightened by brass rim studs. But you want to talk about the way pioneer jazz drummers took origins of military percussion, and with that they scored heightened cadence, intensely syncopated rhythm and ragtime as a sort of transmogrified Marshall meter with Mardi Gras roots, sounding like a sprung shuffle, backbeat pulse, and makes you want to talk about the way the things come back in rock and roll jam, in studios, into afterbeats. Paradiddles, stabbing press rolls on snares and toms, and the things turned sideways into Jamaica with the island's jamming ska music, reggae beat. But before that, you want to talk about the symbols, symbolic time for the 1940s, and how it headlined ride rhythms behind the boppish spontaneity of the solos, always using the bass drum for offbeats and sporadic bombs. And as jazz evolved, brushes used as early as the 1920s would tend to understate the rhythm section. During more or less blues ballad excursions articulated by sprays of steel wire, fastened to metal or rubber stems so they whispered and whapped on drum skins and across an array of cymbals goosenecked over the bass tub nearby. Sock cymbals, called hi-hats, open, close, mobilized by the drummer's left foot on an attached metal pedal. So, naturally, drummers began to evolve with drum-sounding changes by using tuning keys for diverse pitches, and how they lingered at the Zildjian factory in Quincy, Massachusetts. But you want to talk about old guard players, the stick and skin end of the battery, the timekeepers in the human race, the thumpers behind the Count of Basie, the Earl of Bostic, the Duke of Ellington, when he conducted a drum is a woman. And Stan the Man Kenton's band, challenging dancers of the Rendezvous Ballroom in 1942, and any of Woody's herds. You want to talk about Dave Tuff, Louis Bellson, Sid Catlett, Gene Krupa, Jake Hanna, Buddy Rich, Sonny Greer, Cozy Cole, Old Man Brooks, Shooty Singleton, Shadow Wilson, Chick Webb, Slick Jones, and Philly Joe. All the way to the bebop cannons, Max Roach, Denzel Best, Art Blakey, Panama Francis, Elvin, Connie Kay, Jimmy Cobb, Roy Haynes, Mousy Alexander, and Clute. With Latino boppers Candido or Chano Pozo splitting the Congolese apple. Cal Jader, Joe Morello, Chico Hamilton, Frank Butler and Shelley on the coast. You want to talk about the constantly merging studio session talent. O.C. Johnson, Eddie Shaughnessy, Jimmy Campbell, Bobby Rosengarten. But it was battery boppers who became as disconcerting a rush to traditional ears as the Charlie Parker disciples of alto saxophone salvation. Or do you want to talk about how their snare skins got finer and tighter so they produced a high-pitched rasp? So the bass drum reduced in size had a sound that became stringent and insolent. And most particularly, the ride cymbal began to emit a high, shrill whine. But you want to talk about all this drumming, maybe without forgetting the new thing, evolution to space-age modernity. Not forget the multiplication of percussive rock for fusion or crossover music. Not forget the Alphonse Mouzon or Billy Cobham translucent plexiglass tubs. Ganged together set assembled for the electric fever, which most incites these neoteric drummies towards amplified wars of sound, then inspire them to just plain playing time. So you really want to talk about it all, because it all has to do with that insistent throb, pounding support, stinging cymbal song, that drum beat freedom sound. It gives a headache to the guards of cultural restraint.
Yes, what a great clip with Doors drummer John Densmore and Grammy and Pulitzer Prize nominated poet Michael C. Ford.
Nomination means you lost.
There you go.
Doesn't that
We're going to break right into another poem here, a poem about the Doors.
Well, because we just looked at John Densmore, who we were talking about, and I discovered this. I'd written this in 1986, forgot about it, and in light of what's happening, listen to this. Comes out of a dream I had, and totally insane. A Doors music dream sequence, which is exactly what it was. I have black and white dream about totally dead actors, pop music gravestones, and James Douglas Morrison and death rock, and Jane Mansfield, this raw power, ultra deluxe, human nature pinup figure, wants to be upfront, lead vocalist, feature creature for brand new regrouping of the Doors. No kidding, and this could really happen. Oh yeah, and it's totally some hungover Sunday morning hysteria, and you can see me cacked out there in this tiny one-room little shack in rangy foothill area of Table Mountain, Idaho, Ray, the only organ grinder during the legendary course of Doors music days, knocks on old doors, so to speak, comes in, beginning in a breathless way to tell me he's just signed Jane Mansfield straight out of reality to replace Morrison's poor dead memory, and I don't even argue. Do not even try to remind Ray that, hey, by the way, Jane is too in a sort of what you might call grave situation, and I try not to think of her platinum skull like a beautiful bowling ball rolling down an asphalt alley of a slick Bukowski-like highway horror show of high roller karma. No, no, no funeral portraits of friends must hang in my mind's cool museum, but they do. Just forget all about ectoplasmic impossible nutcase obsessions, and suddenly Ann Moore, female media cop who arrested beat scene images of Morrison's and mine and scattered New York poetry Renaissance hipsters at long-gone Hollywood cinema space, and I do not question her further when she hands over to me actual car keys to a 1943 classic Buick Special convertible in absolutely mint vintage, and she instructs me to drive Jane Mansfield, who now seems to be standing on a street corner in Boise, and so I do, and we start a trek that takes us all the way from northwest to South Khalifa, but with essentially undesignated final destination. However, way later, I cut the engine and regard Jane, who is looking like a prom date in a sabotage ballroom, and she absently picks up sheet music and commences to sing, and I swear it, Love Me Two Times, in an almost moody soundtrack, tuneful way, and I kick the motor again with a hot spark ignition and negotiate the road, and her voice is so full of wistful, mournful, ruminative, soulful, aggressive, indomitable, heroic, undoors-like sentimentality, but further conversation proves to me that she ain't never even heard any Doors proto-punk surrealist songs, and goes on to say she really just thinks it'll be fun to face new strange audience of drunks and stoners and losers and hypes and psychos and sidewinders and downwinders and degenerates. And then she says, look, stop here, as we were about to pass by a junk food drive-in called, and I swear this too, Creme de Wit.